for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
Welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this evening. Things we're going to dive into. First, we're going to kind of dive into a little bit of the foreign news with the U.S. and its support over in Syria for these so-called moderate rebels, which many have pointed out are not moderate rebels and are basically taking our aid and it's going to ISIS. And you have the back and forth whether there are moderate rebels, whether they're not. I think there are, but I don't think they're being supported by the U.S. I think the moderate rebels are fighting this alone. There might be a little bit of aid, but very little. I think mostly what's going on is the attempt to overthrow the Syrian government. This was kind of all planned out, and many people pointed this out 4 or 5 years ago, that Libya, Syria, eventually even Turkey, are all somehow targets, and it seems to be playing out pretty well. All over the Middle East, we have destabilized, and then, talk about women's rights and all this, while at the same time we are working alongside Saudi Arabia. And if anybody knows, a lot of the radical views that you see in ISIS are the same radical views that are held by Saudi Arabia for the most part, at least the people in control. And many of the other people, because, you step out of line, the people there react to that ideology, beating and stoning, and women do just a little slip up, they'll get hit, knocked out right there on the street. It's a very radical Muslim country, and the U.S. works with them, allies with them. At the same time, we in the mainstream media slam, the rights abuses in all these other countries, and then we literally turn these countries into complete and utter rubble. We're not fighting a country that is trying to destroy America. We are fighting ideology that has used our presence as a justification to carry out a caliphate. And we know this whole Aleppo thing there in Syria has become a thing where Gary Johnson didn't know what Aleppo is. And people are like, oh, it's not a big idea. You get these people that just want to go with the Libertarian Party because it has libertarian in it, not looking at the candidate in it. If you don't know, Aleppo, you don't know what's going on over there, how are you going to stop it? I'll play that clip real quick of Gary Johnson not able to answer what is Aleppo, a question about Aleppo, and he's like, what is Aleppo? Let's go ahead and cue that up. I want to go ahead and play that for people that might have not actually heard it, might have heard people talking about it, but haven't actually heard the interview.
About Aleppo. And what is Aleppo?
You're kidding.
No.
Aleppo is in Syria. It's the epicenter of the refugee crisis.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Well, with regard to Syria, I do think that it's a mess. I think that the only way that we deal with Syria is to join hands with Russia to diplomatically bring that at an end. But when we've aligned ourselves with, when we've supported the opposition, the Free Syrian Army is also coupled with the Islamists, and then the fact that we're also supporting the Kurds, and it's just a mess. And
now he seems to have somewhat of a handle on it, but really he's going off of talking points and not getting into the depths of Syria. But he's bringing up the entangling alliances when you're these so-called moderate rebel Muslims, and then the Kurds, which the Kurds are one group that has been really going after ISIS, and because ISIS would like to destroy any Kurds in the region, they have actively been going against ISIS. So we go, okay, we're allies with you because you're against ISIS. Here's a little bit of weaponry. While we take moderate Muslims, spend all this money to train and have these training, courses. And then we find out that most of them left, took the weapons, and joined ISIS. So the entangling alliances are really actually devastating to any positive results coming out of that, because, well, we really don't care as long as we can also take down the Syrian government, Assad. That's their thinking. And they're doing pretty good on acting on that. Because, well, ISIS really isn't dying off at all. Syria is not becoming a peaceful place all of a sudden. And there was a Ron Paul Liberty report. This was out yesterday, and it didn't have Ron Paul in it, but it does have his co-host there. But they speak with Vanessa Beeley, which is a journalist that just returned from Aleppo. And she kind of gets into exactly what is going on over in Syria and how it's being manipulated. and many of you might know from any type of war zone and areas over there in the Middle East and in Aleppo, you hear of the white hats and you've seen the white hats. Well, there's a very interesting twist in Syria and Aleppo when it comes to the white hats. And she gets into this, and you really need to understand all the facets and areas that these are taking place in to see where the borders and the lines in the sand are being drawn when it comes to really how far are we involved in manipulating and taking down the Syrian government. And, Putin's been warning that the U.S. is doing this and not really, truly holding to it. Oh, yeah, we won't, send any weaponry or whatever, treaty we come up with. But they will not stop the manipulation and the very secretive things that they are doing, but they are visible definitely to the people that are there. And then you have to go, oh, okay, when this is happening, this is what causes anger towards America. And we've seen the pictures of before and after of Iraq, Afghanistan, of Syria, of Libya, all these countries that we're involved in, before and after. And then the stability in those regions. How good is that? And really, it kind of goes back to what our founding fathers talked about, and that was especially my mind's drawing a blank, sorry, but the entangling alliances, it never works. It never works. It's always what hampers the ability for peace to come about. Let me go ahead and get into this Ron Paul Liberty Report, why everything you hear about Aleppo is wrong. And again, they're interviewing Vanessa Beeley, a journalist that just returned from Aleppo.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. I'm the co-host, Daniel McAdams. Dr. Paul is traveling. He's speaking at his old alma mater, Gettysburg College, tonight, so I have the reins today. Today we're going to be talking about something that is in the news. It's been covered extensively in both the U.S. and the international news, and that is the situation in Aleppo. We've talked about this before, but as things get more and more serious, there is a need to revisit the topic, I think, and give some updates. But I am very fortunate today to have a special guest, Vanessa Beeley. She is an independent investigative journalist and photographer. And unlike most of the people who will spout off about what's going on in Syria and Aleppo, she actually just returned from there as an investigative reporter. So, Vanessa, thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for inviting me to come on.
Maybe if you don't mind giving our viewers just a couple of words about your background, where you come from, what you do, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, sure. I'm British born. My father was a British diplomat, British ambassador to the Middle East throughout most of his career. That's what gave me the interest in the Middle East. I spent some time in Gaza as a peace activist, lived there in 2012 through the Israeli bombing campaign at the end of 2012. And then obviously developed an interest in writing about my experience, which led to my being involved with various organizations that are covering the Syria crisis as independent investigative analysts and researchers. I write predominantly for 21st Century Wire, and the articles have also been published at Mint Press.
Good. That's great. Well, I don't need to tell you that this has been a really dramatic week when it comes to Syria and Aleppo. We saw yesterday the State Department spokesman, John Kirby. He warned the Russians that if they continue fighting and assisting the Syrian government, more Russian lives will be lost, more Russian planes will be shot down. A very chilling thing for him to say. He said Russians will be coming home in body bags. It sounds like a threat, and you might just say it's typical of John Kirby's blowhard style of speaking. But when you couple that with the fact that during the ceasefire that lasted about a week and ended a few days ago, the U.S. and its allies were shipping literally tons of anti-aircraft rockets to their rebels in and around Aleppo. You could see a situation where you would have a Russian plane shot down with American-provided missiles, U.S. and UK-provided missiles. That is very, very frightening. Kirby also said, John Kerry said that the U.S. would suspend cooperation with the Russians unless the attacks on eastern Aleppo cease. We hear a lot about Aleppo in the media in the U.S., and Vanessa, I know you won't be shocked to hear that the U.S. mainstream media gets it all wrong. I'm going to read a couple of headlines that I just pulled at random from today, and then I'm going to toss it back to you to let me know whether these are right or wrong. Here's the Washington Post, the paper of record for Washington, D.C. Darkness and fear in Aleppo as the bombs rain down. Washington Times, U.S. pressed to prevent Aleppo bloodbath as residents sit in their homes waiting to die. New York Times, Vladimir Putin's outlaw state. New York Times, the brutal strategy behind Russia's massacres in Syria. That's a little flavor of our media over here, Vanessa. How accurate is that in your experience? You just returned from a trip to Aleppo.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing such an amplification of this anti-Russia, anti-Syria propaganda right now, and it's very simply because the Syrian Arab Army and their allies are advancing through eastern Aleppo, and they're routing the U.S. and NATO-backed terrorists that are occupying that area. This is a very important point to make, because the majority of the Western media in the UK as well as in the US are very much portraying Aleppo as a sort of homogenous city. That's not true. We're talking here very clearly the tale of two cities, if you like. Aleppo has been divided by the terrorist invasion that happened around 2012. Right from the very beginning, Aleppo has resisted any attempts to pull it into the so-called mythical revolution. And because of that fact, the invasion that happened in 2012 has inflicted punitive measures on Western Aleppo, if you like, because they were responsible for resisting the armed revolution. 600,000 civilians fled from eastern Aleppo into western Aleppo very early on when the terrorists invaded. Those that are left, there's probably around, according to the Aleppo Medical Association that we met with when we went to Aleppo, there's around 200,000, maybe even less now, people left in eastern Aleppo. At least a quarter of that, if not more, are terrorists and their families. The civilians that are in eastern Aleppo, the majority of them are being held hostage. We were given many witness testimonies that stated to us they have family that are still in East Aleppo that are terrified to leave to come into the government-held Western Aleppo, because if they leave, members of their family, their friends, their relations will be murdered by the terrorists. So fundamentally, these terrorists are using these civilians as human shields and then declaring to the media that's accepting their propaganda that these civilians are under threat. The only reason they're under threat is because they're being imprisoned in this area by the terrorists and used as human shields.
you already said something that sort of breaks with the mainstream narrative, because for any rational person, you say that 600,000 people escaped from eastern Aleppo into western Aleppo. Well, if the mainstream narrative is correct, which is that Assad simply enjoys murdering his own people, then why on earth would people go from liberated East Aleppo into the realm of the murderous tyrant Assad in western Aleppo? Something doesn't make sense here.
Absolutely, you've absolutely hit the button. And in fact, what people need to realize is that 90% of the internally displaced people, the people that have been driven out of their towns and villages by the terrorist invasion, the genetically modified terrorists, whatever brand name they're given, they are terrorists. And that's according to the Syrian people. That's not my opinion. But these internally displaced people, 90% have gone into government-held areas for protection. That's over 7 million people that have been displaced inside Syria, that have fled to government-held areas. And let's just also dismantle the whole sectarian idea, because if you go to the coastal areas, for example, like Tartus and Latakia, you will find there are Sunni, there are Alawite, there are Christians, there are all manner of denominations that have fled to that area to cohabit and coexist side by side in taking refuge from the terrorist attacks and massacres that are going on in their homes and villages. So you're absolutely right to make that point. And the other point is there is a huge campaign of dehumanization of the Syrian people by the Western media. Yesterday I saw that those that are in West Aleppo were being described as Assad supporters. This is a complete lie. These people are not necessarily Assad supporters. They may be against Assad. The difference is they don't believe in killing Syria to improve Syria. And that's a direct quote from one of the doctors working in West Aleppo. That's another point to make. They talk all the time about the last doctor in East Aleppo. They again create this entire campaign about the hospitals and the last doctor in East Aleppo. There are 4,120 doctors working in Aleppo, right? And 200 have joined that number in the last 6 months, registered with the Aleppo Medical Association. And the government has sent doctors from West Aleppo, paying their salaries, into eastern Aleppo to treat not only terrorists, but the civilians that are being held by the terrorists there. And those that have stopped them coming in are the terrorists, the so-called rebels or opposition, as they are described in the Western media. The hospitals, there are 3 main hospitals in East Aleppo, only 3. And there are 7 basic health centers that don't have the facilities to carry out operations and so on. Those 3 hospitals, in Al-Dakak, in Al-Zara, and the Omar Abdulaziz Hospital, which was created by the Grand Mufti Hassoun, are all occupied by terrorists. The top floors are being used as sniping towers. Again, this is not described. And they will treat terrorists as a priority over civilians. The Al-Quds Hospital, which has been in the news recently, which, by the way, was destroyed, according to all mainstream media, in April. It was reduced to a smouldering heap, as per their reports, is now suddenly rebuilt in the last few months and is now top of the agenda again in the propaganda. Al-Quds Hospital is a terrorist triage center that has been set up by the terrorists. It was visited on the 12th of August, prior to our visit, by Sheikh Abdullah Muhizini, who is the Riyadh-educated and funded leader of Jaish al-Fatah, the Armory of Conquest, chief trainer of suicide bombers, and chief terrorist funder, armor, and executor.
Sounds like a nice guy. You know, for anyone who might suggest that you're being a little emphatic with your words, calling the East Aleppo terrorists, I would simply remind our viewers that Colonel Steve Warren, who's a Pentagon spokesperson, said not long ago that Eastern Aleppo is in the hands of the Nusra Front, which is Al-Qaeda, which we all recognize as terrorists. They had something to do with something that happened in the U.S. on 9/11. Yet somehow it seems that the U.S. is desperate to protect an area that its own government says is occupied and under siege by Al-Qaeda terrorists. You know, you can forgive the viewers for being confused about this.
Absolutely. Yeah, and actually, I can easily forgive the viewers, trust me. Even for me, someone that's been there and has been writing on this for ages now. There's 22 I call them genetically modified terrorists because we can't call them moderates. We can't call them anything other than terrorists. And again, I have to stress here, that comes from every single Syrian person that I met across the governorates that I travel to. They do not even consider there is any differentiation between these terrorists. They are all criminals. They are all mass murderers. They are all rapists. They are all torturers. They are all abusers of their children and their families. And yesterday, in fact, you're quite right, 80% of those 200,000 people that are in East Aleppo have been described as being Nusra Front. And yesterday, in fact, while the media was amplifying and megaphoning the propaganda that was being provided to them by the terrorist factions inside East Aleppo, mortars were being rained down upon civilians in West Aleppo. We had descriptions of it being like hell yesterday. There was a 6-year-old child, Pamela, I need to get her name right, Kazanji, who was hit by a mortar. She's 6 years old. She's now paralyzed. And at the same time, the Free Idlib Army, which is, again, the new genetically modified version of the U.S. terrorists that are in Idlib, were firing Bulgarian, among other countries, supplied Grad missiles into northern Aleppo. And one family in Al-Zara, which is in northern Aleppo countryside, 4 of their children from the age of 11 down to 1.5 were dreadfully injured by these missile attacks yesterday. None of this is mentioned. These terrorists that are called rebels, that are called moderate rebels, that are called opposition, are massacring Syrian people. They are not Syrian people who are Assad supporters. They are Syrian people, whether they are Christian, whether they are Shia, whether they are Sunni, whether they are Alawite. Every single one of them will say to you, we are Syrian first and foremost. And we are not here, even if we disagree with our government, we're not here to kill our country in order to improve it.
Yeah, and it might be difficult for a lot of Americans to understand or to believe that its government is siding with terrorists. But Dr. Paul and I did a show on this, I think, yesterday, where we pointed out this is not unprecedented. After the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979, the U.S. very actively supported the Mujahideen, which then became Al-Qaeda, bin Laden. So there is a precedent to this, to the U.S. backing terrorists, because the U.S. goal, and I think you'll agree with this, Vanessa, has always been regime change in Syria. Everything else is just for show. The reality is they have got to change the regime in Syria, and that's the goal. But I want to go into the propaganda a little bit, because the propaganda has been like nothing we have ever seen on this, the Western propaganda. And now here's something I know that you know about, because I read your writing about it. And these are the so-called white helmets. And they're portrayed here in the U.S. as selfless humanitarians that rush in the face of danger and save little children from the rubble. And they're always photographed doing this. But there is a different side to these so-called white helmets, and I think you know quite a bit about it, Vanessa.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for bringing them up. As we know, they're sort of being feted and celebrated and iconized, really, as heroes and saviors of humanity. One of the things that I did while I was in Syria, and I did it deliberately as part of my investigation into this group, was I visited the real Syria civil defense in Aleppo, in Tartus, in Latakia, and the headquarters in Damascus, which is right in the Jaish al-Islam territory, very close by to Joba. So they're constantly under attack from terrorist mortar fire and snipers and explosive bullets. What I found out from the real Syria civil defense basically backed up the research that I'd been doing up until then. This is fundamentally, the white helmets, in my opinion, are fundamentally an attempt by the US and by NATO states to create a shadow state inside Syria, which again is a very familiar pattern. They did this in Iraq, and they are definitely doing this in Syria. The white helmets, despite saying that they are an NGO and that they're independent and that they have no funding from interested parties in the conflict in Syria, they're receiving probably now around $100 million at a conservative estimate From the US via USA, 23 million. From the UK, we had Boris Johnson yesterday saying that he was going to up the ante to 32 million pounds. Japan is now involved. Denmark, Holland, Germany the other day confirmed that they would give them 7 million. Holland. So we have a cabal, a sort of a coalition of the white helmets, if you like. And $100 million we're supposed to believe is going to fund 3,000 operatives in a supposed cobbled together humanitarian NGO. This is the kind of money that you put into an army. It's not the kind of money that you put into a very simple NGO. We know for a fact they fabricate evidence. That's been proven in my reports. We know for a fact that they are sectarian. When the Madaya propaganda broke in January 2016, they were photographed calling for the burning and destruction of two Idlib villages, Kafraya and Foua, that have been under siege by the US terrorists, al-Sham, since March 2015, and have lost 1,700 civilians under shelling and sniper fire. And the White Helmets were calling for their further destruction. We have numerous photographs showing them armed, showing them basically acting as terrorists, and then quickly putting on the white helmet when they're needed to make another promotional video. I mean, I'm being flippant here, but this is genuinely what is happening. When I spoke to the Syria Civil Defense, the real Syria Civil Defense, and again, I will reiterate, the white helmets are being used to eradicate yet another Syrian state institution, which is the real Syria Civil Defense that has been in existence for 63 years, since 1953. It's registered with the International Civil Defense Organization, which is affiliated to the UN, to the WHO, to OCHA, to Red Cross and Red Crescent. It's a fully certified civil defense organization. So why are the millions not going to this organization to help save civilians in Syria? This organization, the real Syria Civil Defense, is working in both terrorist and civilian areas, and it's rescuing people every day with no recognition from Western media. And not one Western media pundit has gone to visit the real Syria Civil Defense in 5.5 years of war. That's criminal in my book. The White Helmets, just very quickly coming back to them, when I spoke to the Syria Civil Defense, particularly in Aleppo, they told me that in 2012, when the terrorists invaded, they took over the real Syria Civil Defense units there. These terrorists then later became the White Helmets. One of the crew members of the real Syria Civil Defense that's now in West Aleppo, it gets a little bit convoluted, he told me basically that when they came, they said to him, they threatened him, they said, you have to stay and work with us, you have to help us set this up. He escaped, he left his family behind, he had no choice. When he escaped, the so-called White Helmets put his name on all the checkpoints. So if he were to come back to visit his family in East Aleppo, he would be executed. They stole ambulances, all of the ambulances, 3 of their fire engines. They murdered other real civil defense members. They kidnapped others. They drove others out of East Aleppo into West Aleppo. And this is not an isolated incident. Basically, this same procedure happened in Idlib, in Deir ez-Zor, in Raqqa. Across Syria, in other words. So, you know, this organization is basically, as far as I'm concerned, they're a terrorist support group. They're acting as terrorists in many instances, and they are terrorists, and yet they're being described by our governments as humanitarian first responders.
Well, they're also described as volunteers. So if all of these guys are volunteers, honestly, where does this $100 million go? I mean, even a super big NGO, even, you know, the Heritage Foundation or something, $100 million goes a long way. Where do you think this money is going? Everyone's a volunteer, yet they've got $100 million.
I think it's a front for funding the arms trade into Syria, to be quite honest. And if you think about it, this is a perfect front. They're first responders. They're traveling backwards. They're trained in Turkey. So they're coming from Turkey into Syria all the time, with trucks, with fire engines. If you look at the White Helmets in Idlib, their YouTube videos, it's like a parade of all the equipment they're being given by their various sponsors in the EU and in the US. So they're the perfect conduit, they're the perfect artery into the terrorist-held areas to bring in arms, weapons, and equipment. And I believe that this is where this 100 million is going. And by the way, they're also trained by James de Mazurier, who is a very sort of colorful ex-British military mercenary that has connections back to organizations like Blackwater that are famous for being death squad organizers, basically, for the CIA, and were heavily funded by Bush and then Obama. I think Obama gave around $250 million to Blackwater in order to continue carrying out Blackwater outreach assassination operations. Blackwater became Academy, and then they got merged into various other groups with which James de Mazurier has very strong contacts. So, you know, this is not some grassroots indigenous humanitarian organization. This is a huge operation that's going on. And not only that, the entire war propaganda, the dirty war on Syria, war propaganda, is underpinned by this organization. And so I think this is why we're seeing this incredible rush to give credibility to this organization. And we have to worry about what sort of tool this organization will be in the hands of whoever is elected next in the United States. If it's Hillary Clinton, it's kind of terrifying if these guys get the Nobel Peace Prize. You're talking about terrorists receiving the Nobel Peace Prize. That's a descent into insanity, as far as I can work out.
Well, in all defense, Obama got it, and he's been pretty bad too. So maybe it actually would be appropriate.
Well, yeah, I think he was a little bit more covert terrorism than perhaps the white helmets are. But yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, well,
and Kissinger, by the way.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're going to have to close the show out. I could talk about this a lot longer, and I wish we could. But it's so valuable to get information from people on the ground who've actually been there. Even the mainstream journalists, they're reporting from Lebanon and elsewhere. So I just want to thank you very much for coming and sharing with us, and I hope we can have you on again for some more insights. So thank you very much, Vanessa.
Thank you so much for giving me the platform, and thank you so much to your viewers. Really appreciate it.
And I want to thank all of the viewers today for listening to a very different look at Syria, a very different look at how the media portrays things. And I think it's just very important to talk to people that have been there. So let's hope that something changes and that peace will finally come to this poor, beleaguered country. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.
Ron Paul Liberty Report, RonPaulLibertyReport.com, and Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube. Go there, subscribe, check out all the other great clips he has. Now, let me pull this up here. I have another article covering the topic, but like I said, she covered, you know, the whole humanitarian aid organizations really being hijacked and ran by these rebel terrorist groups. Not something they exactly cover in the mainstream media, because then that kind of, well, it goes against the propaganda that they're trying to spread to kind of keep us in this war. Excuse me. Now, if I could find this article. Now, with everything going on, you look over here in Syria, and we heard that, you know, there was this, you know, treaty, this peace treaty, or, you know, ceasefire treaty, whatever they wanted to call it, between Russia and the U.S. and Syria to, you know, try to bring an end to this. And really, I think most people don't really have any interest in seeing Syria destroyed. This one out of Reuters, Russia says U.S.-Syria statement shows Washington supports terrorism. We cannot interpret this this as anything else apart from the current U.S. administration de facto support for terrorism. Russia is outraged by the threatening tone of the latest U.S. statement on Syria, viewing it as a tantamount to supporting terrorism. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Rabkov said on Thursday, according to Russian news agencies. Rabkov was referring to a statement made by the U.S. State Department spokesman John Kirby, who said on Wednesday that Russia had an interest in stopping the violence in Syria because extremists could exploit the vacuum there and launch attacks against Russian interests, perhaps even Russian cities. We cannot interpret this as anything else apart from the current U.S. administration's de facto support for terrorism. Ryabkov was quoted as saying, "These thinly disguised invitations to use terrorism as a weapon against Russia show the political depths the current U.S. administration has stopped to in its approach to the Middle East and specifically to Syria." Again, that was from Reuters.com. You can read the rest of it there. Now, give me a second here. If I can find it. Another article. Just give me a quick second here, guys. Okay. I found it. Got a lot of tabs open here. This one was out of The Intercept. U.S. military is building a $100 million drone base in Africa. What does that really mean? Is that a signal that there is absolutely no plans, no interest in pulling out of some of these areas, allowing these areas to be more self-reliant? Because I don't ever remember the idea of America being the coddlers and the rulers of the world. We always hear the excuse we're doing it for to stabilize or keep peace around the world, but we're not accomplishing that. It's been proven not to work, but somehow they still insist on doing it. I think that we are now reaching a point where people are saying enough is enough. We don't buy any of this. But still, it goes on. Getting out of The Intercept. From high above, Agadez almost blends into the cocoa-colored wasteland that surrounds it. Only when you descend farther can you make out a city that curves around and airfield before fading into the desert once a nexus for camel caravans hauling tea and salt across the Sahara. Agadez is now a West African paradise for people smugglers and a way station for refugees and migrants intent on reaching Europe's shores by any means necessary. Africans fleeing unrest and poverty are not, however, the only foreigners making their way to this town. In the center of Niger, U.S. military documents reveal new information about an American drone base under construction on the outskirts of the city. The long-planned project, considered the most important U.S. military construction effort in Africa, according to formerly secret files obtained by the Intercept through the Freedom of Information Act, is slated to cost $100 million. We always know that it ends up always coming out more somehow. And it's just one of a number of recent American military initiatives in the impoverished nation. The base is the latest sign, experts say, of an ever-increasing emphasis on counter-terror operations in the north and west of the continent. The north and the west. Really? The north and the west? You sure they're not going to be sending some of these to the east? As the only country in the region willing to allow a U.S. base for MQ-9 Reapers, wonder why. A newer, larger, and potentially more lethal model than the venerable Predator drone, Niger has positioned itself to be the key regional hub for the U.S. military operations, with Agadez serving as the premier outpost for launching intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions against a plethora of terror groups. For years, the U.S. operated from an airbase in Niamey, Niger's capital, but in early 2014, Captain Rick Cook, then chief of U.S. Africa Command's Engineer Division, mentioned the potential for a new semi-permanent base-like facility in Niger. That September, the Washington Post's Craig Whitlock exposed plans to base drones at Agadez. Within days, the U.S. Embassy in Niamey announced that AFRICOM was indeed assessing the possibility of establishing a temporary expeditionary contingency support location there. The outpost, according to the communique, presents an attractive option which to base intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Assets given its proximity to the threats in the region and the complexity of operating with the vast distance of African geography. Air Force documents submitted to Congress in 2015 note that the U.S. negotiated an agreement with the government of Niger to allow for the construction of a new runway and all associated pavements, facilities, and infrastructure adjacent to the Niger Armed Forces base, Irene 201, Airbase 201, south of the city of Agadez. When the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2016 was introduced last April, embedded in it was a $50 million request for the construction of an airfield and base camp in Agadez, Niger. to support operations in Western Africa when President Obama signed the defense bill that some was authorized. And you can read the rest of this article. It's a little long, but it really gets in depth in this whole operation to really expand what we have going on in Africa. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't know what's going on in these areas, but what's going on and how involved we become are two different things. I think there's a lot that by us being there, it always seems to only embolden and make the claims by a lot of these people that are using it to try to have power over others more legitimacy. I don't think our intervention is needed to have a society get angry. And I think there's a lot more to that in itself that would probably be a 4-part special if I decided to go that route. We need to have someone that truly understands, we have so many bases in so many countries that our resources are basically being used, our wealth, our knowledge is being used on others and not in a positive way. I don't think you could look at the Middle East and say we made positive change. We got rid of what? A dictator for a terror organization. We knocked them back in the Stone Ages, literally, where they stone people. Not saying these countries were something great under the dictators, but we haven't made things better, and then we destroyed their country on top of it. If anything, things have gotten worse. We have these terror organizations that will go in, kill all the males, or recruit part of them, or steal the children, rape them, kill them. We've seen what they've done, and instead of going, hey, the more we involve ourselves, the worse it gets, we just keep pouring gasoline on the fire. And it's unbelievable when I do hear people feed into the propaganda put out by the war hawks. And it amazes me. They're like, we've been doing it. This is what we've got. Realize that the government has their agenda. And it's not to take out bad people. It's to take out people that get in the way of their agenda. Which becomes their agenda. Okay. I have one here. We're going to kind of get off Syria for now. We're going to get into some of the election. First, we're going to cover a little bit of Hillary. Give me a second, sorry. Problem. Try and pull my browser back up. Again, I have to use this second machine. Okay, this from We Are Change. And this is the FBI just submitted to obstruction of justice with Clinton email. And we'll get into a little bit more to pass this here. Give me a second, and we'll get this pulled up here. There we go.
Right now, the director of the FBI, James Comey, is testifying. He is on the stand for the House Oversight Committee, and the hearing is not even done yet. And the information that has already been brought forward is mind-blowing because these people utterly think that we, all of us, are just retarded. That we're just stupid and that they could get away with anything. Let's just give up. Let's just give up on any semblance of law and order, any semblance of justice in this country because slowly it happened before. But right now, it's just so blatant in our face that it's unbelievable to believe. Now, James Comey actually refused to testify a few days ago. Now he's testifying, and we could see why. You can see why he refused to, because he's not only rejecting and call to pretty much reopen the Hillary Clinton email case, which is a logical, common sense thing to do since all this new information has been provided, since new classified emails have been provided, since her IT guy is lying to, again, on the stand and just pleading the fifth. Since all this is happening, it makes perfect sense to open the case. But no, he's not going to open the case. And he said he looked hard for obstruction of justice in this email case. Meanwhile, during this hearing, he actually admitted, and he actually said,
whether our folks had read them all or not. We had a pretty good understanding of what we thought he had done, but that's my best recollection.
Okay, in the last week, in mass, he's been deleting them from Reddit posts. Is that consistent with preserving evidence? I say that because there's still an ongoing interest by Congress, and only in spite of Reddit's own senior, what they call flak team, trying to hide it, only because a few people caught it, do we even know about it, and is this and other committees interested in getting the backups that may exist on these deletions? I guess my question to you is he destroying evidence relevant to congressional inquiries? And I'll answer it for you, yes, he is. And what are you going to do about it?
That's not something I can comment on.
of course, you son of a gun. Not something I could comment on. Of course, because you just put your foot in your own mouth. You just screwed yourself over because you said, I looked very hard for obstruction of evidence. Meanwhile, you just admitted that you knew about Stone Tier. Now, who is Stone Tier? Again, this whole Reddit conspiracy is unfolding in Congress right now, and it is real. Stone Tier, this guy, it's Hillary Clinton's IT guy, who went on Reddit and asked Reddit users how he could destroy evidence, how he could help obstruction of justice for VIP clients. And again, the man who deleted these emails, he testified just a couple days ago, and all he had to say was, I plead the fifth. Reddit is now also deleting posts around this, but Reddit has also been ordered to preserve all the posts relating to Stoned here, Hillary Clinton's IT guy, who went back into Reddit after the Reddit community found out, hey, this guy is working for Hillary Clinton. This guy's looking to destroy emails and evidence. Once that became public from the online community, Stone Tier, Hillary Clinton's IT guy, went back and deleted every single post, every single question he made. But now Reddit is actually ordering all those records to be sealed. So this information is getting really interesting. And now a GOP chairman is actually demanding an interview with Hillary Clinton's IT aides after all these Reddit posts have been made public. So all this information is blowing up in their face. But when it comes to the systemic kind of hypocrisy and obstruction of justice, you could see the FBI doing that as well. That's why James Comey was asked today, why was he handing out immunity agreements like it was candy? The FBI gave Hillary Clinton's aides immunity from justice. Not a single Democrat held Clinton's IT aide in contempt of court. This man lied, and the FBI gave him a free get out of jail card. Why did this happen? There's even more emails coming showing how Barack Obama was using a pseudonym with Hillary Clinton. Now, Barack Obama said he wasn't aware of Hillary Clinton's private email server until he actually read it in a newspaper. That's an absolute lie. Again, thinking that we're all just stupid and not going to connect the dots like we are here on wearechange.org. But after all this, the only thing the FBI, from all their corruption, from all this just outright injustice that's happening in front of our eyes, the only thing they could say, well, quote, you can call us wrong, but don't call us weasels. Don't call us weasels, okay? We apologize for the mistake. Come the fuck on, you son of a bitch. It's pretty much clear. WikiLeaks put it best. They went public. Hillary Clinton lied, and the FBI covered it up. The obstruction of justice is happening within our very own government. That's why the investigation reeks of corruption. That's why this investigation was just an absolute sham. Don't watch the testimony. It's still going on right now. You can probably watch it somewhere on C-SPAN. I'll give you an abbreviated version of what they actually said without saying it. James Comey, the FBI director, taking the stand, will say, we found her to be extremely careless in her handling of classified information, but we recommend no charges be filed due to stupidity and lack of harmful intent. Meanwhile, they never looked at anything else. Plus, I like my job and don't want to end up dead. Ultimately, yeah. There's a great infographic here that you guys could see in the description below, just showing all the outright corruption, all the pay-to-play schemes with the Clinton Foundation, Blackwater, Saudi Arabia, and just the outright vehicle that was government for Hillary Clinton that ordered her to be where she is right now on top of this huge establishment corruption pile of doo-doo. And that's what we have, and that's what's unfolding right in front of us. She is inept. She is above the law. She doesn't care. She leaves classified information in a Russian hotel room during her trip as Secretary of State. Doesn't matter. But violates no, it doesn't matter. And that's why, because of the Reddit community, because of you sharing and watching this video, because of all the people actually paying attention, connecting all of these dots, saying, wait, you said this, but you're really just putting your foot in your mouth because you're a lying piece of crap butthole who is filled with outright lies and contempt and crap for anything good and anything that has human decency, because you are a part of government, you're a part of that steaming pile of crap. Because of all this, Hillary Clinton is now losing in the polls. Yes. I don't know how I feel about the other person winning, but regardless, this video is about the pure evil scum establishment trash that is Hillary Clinton. If you enjoyed it, watch it, share it with your friends and family members. This information needs to be connected, needs to be put together, needs to be shown to you because no one else will, especially the mainstream media. So support us on patreon.com/wearechange. $1 a month keeps us unfiltered, free, and independent, working solely for you. $1.
wearechange.org and We Are Change on YouTube. You can subscribe on YouTube. Now, Trump is currently on a Twitter rant about Hillary and former pageant winner. What this has to do with this country makes absolutely no sense. And I think this If Trump loses, this is how he loses. Something tells me that he won't lose. Something in my gut tells me that he's going to win. I think that between the people that just absolutely do not want Hillary in office and the people that don't trust her, don't like her, all the way into her party, I don't think that she'll have the people show up and vote for her. She might have registered voters in maybe a scientific poll that would say Hillary over Trump, but when it comes to election day, I think the enthusiasm will play out for Trump. Trump will get the people that are on his side to the polls. The big percent of them. Hillary, on the other hand, even the people that say Hillary over Trump don't have the enthusiasm, motivation in a large enough amount to get her elected. But if Trump keeps playing this attack game, Twitter nonsense, that could hurt. That can be a game changer. He's going to have to stop doing it. Like I said, I really don't care who gets in. I do believe Trump would do the least damage to me right away, but he would put mechanisms and make precedents that when it does fall into the other side's hands, that then I would really worry. We see this and it's played out, but where we're getting to the point where regulating and all this has gotten to a point that now it's becoming truly a police state. And where do we go from here? If we have bigger government, stronger government grabs on freedom and over states' rights. Trump has said things that say he's going to set those precedents. And if he does, we all should be worried. Okay, I had another short one here from Ron Paul Liberty Report. Does the election matter? And I want to play this. I believe it was only 10 minutes or so.
Hello, everybody.
Thank you for tuning into the Liberty Report. Today I want to talk a little bit about the election and some of the questions I get when I'm being interviewed. One of the most common questions I get asked is, who am I going to support and how important this election is? Don't you think this is the most important election ever? And I'm usually pretty negative on that. I've obviously been involved in politics for a long, long time and involved in elections. But the significance of the election is a lot less than a lot of people think. I think so often it's a distraction, elections. I've always emphasized the philosophy of a people, and the prevailing attitudes have more to do with it than any particular election. And I've always said that if elections really mattered, they'd be illegal. But no, there's a lot of activity and a lot of money spent and a lot of back and forth. And generally speaking, Republicans and Democrats go back and forth, and it's easy to pin the two parties as being very, very close philosophically. And I watched it in Washington. There was no real disagreement between the two parties verbally, and the rhetoric was a little bit different, but we always ended up, with more government. This time it's not so easy to just simplify that and say, there's no difference between the two. Well, the parties, there's no difference, but there definitely is a difference. Trump is certainly not like a Hillary Clinton Democrat, and he's certainly not like a Mitt Romney Republican. So there is a difference, but he certainly isn't a libertarian. So that's where we are today. And do I stick to my statement that elections aren't all that important? It's still what the people are thinking and what type of economic policies we follow and whether or not we accept interventionism. I, of course, think they're so important. And I think that one of the problems going on today is why we don't have real answers and why I'm not expecting any real changes, because even if one of them comes up with the right answer, stop and frisk happens to be now more endorsed by Democrats than by the Republicans. But, so it's a real mixed bag. But I think there's a tremendous momentum in the system. We have momentum for more spending, more printing of money, continue with our foreign policy, continue with Keynesianism. The momentum is so great. So let's say they really did want to cut. And I don't think either candidate, the major candidate right now, really wants to cut spending, because sometimes they compete on who's going to spend the most on infrastructure, and they both agree that we have to spend more money on the military. So that process goes back, and the momentum is so great that nobody's going to cut. Nobody's going to get rid of a department of any department of education or energy. Nobody even going to bring it up because there's too many powerful special interests that would be hurt. And on the short run, they would have some gripes because they would suffer some consequences. So that's not going to happen. The momentum for spending, the conditions are such where the people expect government. The people who are receiving welfare benefits would riot if they thought their benefits would be cut. And what would happen if you cut the military-industrial complex and how the welfare goes to the wealthy in the banking system, the Federal Reserve? That's just not going to happen. So therefore, the election, I think, too often is a distraction. I think that the debt is going to continue, the spending is going to continue, the foreign policy will continue, and I think the monetary policy, even though Trump has mentioned the criticism about the Federal Reserve causing a bubble, he's right about that, absolutely. But he doesn't come up and say, well, get rid of the FOMC, get rid of the power of the Fed to regulate interest rates, get rid of the Fed to monetize debt, which is really the problem. And that's going to have to come in a long time from now. The other thing going on, and you read about it every day, is this runaway cultural Marxism and what's going on in the colleges on words you can't use, the obsessiveness with that. You can't say woman and you can't say man, and people get into trouble for this. At the same time, most of them will profess, I believe in the First Amendment, but this is hurtful language. Well, the First Amendment wasn't designed to protect us, to say uncontroversial things, that we weren't to ever say anything that would offend somebody. Offending people is a natural right. It might make no sense. It might make you look like a jerk, but you can't outlaw people from using and making bad judgments and looking like a jerk, whether it's socially or whether it's, economically speaking. So they don't realize that this First Amendment is in some ways respected. When it comes to religious beliefs, people generally recognize the fact that you have different religious beliefs, or you can be an atheist in this country. And also, we don't outlaw the reading of communism and socialism and authoritarianism and inflationism and Federal Reserveism. We can't, we're allowed to talk about that. But when it comes to something social, all of a sudden they want these authoritarians to come down with political correctness. And if you use a word wrong and somebody takes offense, then you're going to get into trouble. You might lose your job and people just gang up on you. There's a lot of momentum for that. And unfortunately, that is going to continue. Hopefully the American people wake up. The whole problem with what we're facing, whether it's economic or foreign policy or monetary policy, is we're marching rapidly toward a total breakdown of our system. I mean, there's going to be more antagonism over political correctness. People aren't going to put up with that. They're going to get angry. We have militarization of the police, overreacting to the people in the inner city, demanding what they're entitled to. And the conflicts are there. At the same time, our country's going bankrupt. We're broke. We don't have the money to do any of this. We don't have it, and somebody has to eventually cut the spending. But we're marching to a breakdown of the system, and what will be a challenge is the dependence on government. Right now, most people think that they are entitled to certain things, and they can depend on government, both rich and poor. It's a totally opposite condition than what the founders thought they were giving us, with the Constitution, with limiting government, protecting liberty, and allowing people to solve their problems, and that we want equal justice under the law. We don't want perfect equality, which is a goal of socialism. So that all has to change. And I believe, though, that there are some good signs showing that people are waking up to this, but not on the short run. This election is not going to make a difference. Only waking up the people to what the correct philosophies are, and the political changes are minor. If there's some political changes, might happen, but it doesn't deal with what's going on. We're working in conditions of an era change, in the era of big government, the bankruptcy of the country. And if we don't deal with that, we're not going to solve our problems. I'd like to see, the consensus in the country deciding to give liberty a chance, I think it would be good for a change to try liberty, but we don't. Every time we go with bigger government, that's what I see in the campaign today. So even when I hear good things from either side, thinking there's a libertarian tinge there, I don't really expect it to happen. I think the momentum is too great. There's too much indoctrination in our system, too much control by the military-industrial complex. The deep state is really in charge. Nobody's worrying about the deep state. Do you think in the debates they're saying, well, what we really need to do to change this country is we need to expose the deep state and make sure the CIA doesn't get out of control and get overly involved in our own elections or get involved in other elections? No, most people don't know about the deep state, but the special interests are really in charge, and that's not going to change with one election. It's only going to change when the philosophy of the country changes and decides that the role of government be radically changed to that of protecting liberty, following up on the original intent of the founders in this country to have a country where individual liberty would be important, and that the First Amendment means something different than regulating language and what one can say. And the universities supporting an issue like that, and the universities supporting Keynesian economics, which says deficits don't matter. Keynesian interventionist economics that says, printing money is a good thing. These things will end. We have to challenge them. The sooner the better. the sooner we get the American people to say, what we need in this country is liberty. Liberty will solve our problems. We need equal justice under the law, and then we will see some progress. Hopefully we can work to see that day come soon. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.
Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube. Subscribe. You can also go to RonPaulLibertyReport.com. Check that out. More videos and articles there. I had a article here now read out of Reason.com. If I can just lose it. Okay. Trump's foreign policy in the debate. Skeptical of past wars, eager for new ones. And I heard a lot of, I don't even know if you would call them libertarians or people that claim to be freedom fighters, talking about how he brings up, these past wars and all this, but then completely miss the fact that he doesn't really change what we're going to do. We're still going to be interventionists, according to him. Here it says Donald Trump's willingness to insist he was against the Iraq war, to say he eschews nation building, and to insult past GOP foreign policy. Mavins have led some non-interventionists to insist he's a positive game changer for the future of American foreign policy. That didn't seem very likely in the way Trump handled foreign policy questions at last night's first presidential debate. Yes, Trump still wants to make it clear, no matter what contrary evidence might exist, that he was always against the Iraq war. And the idea of U.S. troops fighting in Iraq, he is also, though, against U.S. troops having left Iraq because of the mess it left behind, and also still says he's against nation building. The best case interpretation to tie all that together for those eager to believe in a non-interventionist Trump is that surely he can be trusted to never send troops in anywhere in his attempt to crush the foes he swears we can and must crush, including ISIS, and by strong implication, Iran, since once he does, he'd feel obligated to keep them there forever and make sure things don't go wrong in the country we invaded. That is, he'd feel obligated to nation build. And hasn't he told us he doesn't want to do that? Thus, we can trust him not to do any more full-on invasions. This seems a thin reed of hope. I'm guessing his will to crush will exceed his will not nation build. In the end, he's an avowed fan of surgical Middle Eastern interventions, though he continues to refuse to say out loud whether his ISIS crushing plans will be surgical, boots on the ground, or even nuclear, but isn't clear on why he thinks such surgical attacks, for whatever purpose, not followed up by a continual ground troops, won't leave the same kind of Middle Eastern chaos in its wake. He rightly critiques, perhaps he thinks his oft repeated call to just steal oil from our foes over there will make it all work out fine. Trump won great huzzas from some looking for a less bellicose shakeup in the American foreign policy establishment by once saying some negative things about NATO. Last night, though, he reiterated he merely wants to allocate the costs more fairly among the whole alliance, and in fact is thrilled to see NATO expand its mission to the international war on terror. The lack of an expanded mission, he said last night, was really the only thing that bothered him about NATO ultimately. He did not contradict Clinton when she accused him of wanting to blow up another country's ship if people on it were taunting Americans. But don't worry, peaceniks, he insists that would not start a war. That seems a bit of a chance to take over a taunt, especially if curtailing overseas intervention is your political goal. Last night, Trump's foreign policy mouth seemed, in some cases, to be outrunning his mind, making a strict interpretation of his meaning difficult. I would like everybody to end it. Just get rid of it, he says, of nuclear weapons, which he stresses are the greatest danger we face. But I would certainly not do first strike. I think that once the nuclear alternative happens, it's over. At the same time, we have to be prepared. So certainly not do first strike. Well, maybe I can't take anything off the table because you look at some of these countries, you look at North Korea, we're doing nothing there. He goes on to suggest, as his Libertarian presidential hopeful Gary Johnson, that rather than expending our own force of treasure on bringing North Korea to heel, we should somehow get China to do it. Like the most dedicated neocon, Trump is sure that Iran will get a nuclear bomb within a decade because of the Iran deal he hates, and is very concerned that Israel is very worried about it. The most encouraging thing said last night was his continued recognition of the crushing expense of trying to defend the world. We are losing billions and billions of dollars. We cannot be the policemen of the world. We cannot protect countries all over the world. Still, his overall goal, previously stated, when it comes to military spending, is to increase it anyways. Trump's overall foreign policy vision, as presented in last night's debate and over his political career, provides little hope for resistance, sanity, and frugality. It's great that he seems reluctant to believe that hostility to Russia needs to be a core part of American foreign policy, and that he is capable of at least saying that nation building is out. But his vision of the world sees many nations and threats that either explicitly or implicitly are going to require Americans to wage war in Trump's vision. His essential vision of the world is one that is very dangerous to America and must be brought to heel by force, one in which any perceived blow to our dignity must be met by violence, even if to his mind that doesn't necessarily mean war or nation building. it's still a dangerous vision. And that one was out of Reason.com. Again, Reason.com. Now, I'm going to kind of move on to Gary Johnson here. And many of my listeners know I'm not a Gary Johnson fan. This was from AMTV. Gary Johnson gives fake rant on foreign policy. Why would he give a fake rant? Oh, yeah, the Aleppo thing.
Also, pretty funny video I was watching late last night. Gary Johnson goes on this fake rant. It's kind of ridiculous. He's wearing his jeans, like his mom jeans, and he's got his tie and his coat on, and he actually stands up out of his chair. You know, we interviewed Gary Johnson earlier. You know Gary, he doesn't know what Aleppo is, and then he had another Aleppo moment the other night when he was asked by, I think it was Chris Matthews, who his favorite world leader was, and he's like, oh, I'm having another Aleppo moment. He honestly couldn't name one other world leader. I mean, at the very least, he could have just said, I don't have a favorite world leader. But he goes on a rant, September 28th, 2016, and gets really, really fake angry. It's hilarious over foreign policy and exclusion from the debates, even though we know he's just stealing votes from Donald Trump. Thank you very much, Gary Johnson. Really appreciate you stealing votes from Donald and helping Hillary Clinton get elected. Take a look.
I think one thing people are wondering is, if you were in the debate, how would you handle some of these detailed policy questions? If you had the Aleppo incident, and Hillary Clinton has, like you guys said in your Facebook briefing, piles and piles of...
So I would tell people that in my heart, I want to stop with these military interventions. In my heart, I don't want to send our men and servicewomen to lose their lives, and I don't want them to be responsible for what ultimately are thousands of innocent people being killed in these countries. So Hillary Clinton dots the I's and crosses the T's on all of the names and everything associated with this. But as a result of that, we have the foreign policy that we have right now that I have to tell you, I think is horrible. Horrible. And that's how I would answer it tonight. I would be mad. I would be angry. I would be angry that people would be calling me out on the names, geographic locations, names of foreign leaders, when the underlying policy has thousands of people dying. And that is unacceptable.
So is this the Gary Johnson that we would have seen in the debate?
This is the Gary Johnson that you would have seen in the debates. It angers me to no end.
Huh? Like, I think Gary Johnson was like, all right, man, I've been excluded from the debates. I'm going to try my attempt at a viral video. I've seen that guy Chris Green yell a lot on camera, or somebody like me, and he's like, all right, I got my mom jeans on. He's like, I'm angry, America. I'm angry. Check out my jeans. I'm in these jeans, these mom jeans. I'm casual, and I'm ranting, and I'm angry. But I don't know what Aleppo was, and I can't name my favorite world leader. And not too long ago, there was another video of me where I basically got mad for calling an illegal alien illegal, because I'm an idiot, and I'm retarded, and I'm Gary Johnson. Take a look at that clip.
Came into this country because they couldn't get in legally, and the jobs existed. Just so that you know, when you use that term illegal immigrants, you are upsetting a lot of people by saying that. Just so that you know. Okay, noted. If you use the term illegal immigrants, that is very incendiary to our Hispanic population here in this country.
Why is that?
It just is. It just is. Just so that you know. Just so that you know, and you don't have to use that term.
But isn't the term accurate in the sense that they entered the country, they immigrated to the country illegally, so they are...
They came into this country because they couldn't get in legally, and the jobs existed.
If you enter the country without documentation, is that or is that not an illegal act?
What? What are you talking about? They came into the country illegally because they couldn't get in legally. Yeah, that makes them illegal, Gary. It's called illegal immigration. And there's nothing wrong with calling them illegal immigrants or illegal aliens when they're coming here illegally. But again, you don't know where Aleppo is. And this is what we would have gotten from Gary Johnson at the debates. A guy who can't even name one freaking world leader. I mean, he could have just thrown anything out, like, anything at all. His VP dude that nobody knows who was sitting next to him was like, Merkel.
Merkel? Who's your favorite foreign leader?
Who's my favorite?
Just name anywhere in the country, any one of the continents, any country. Name one foreign leader that you respect and look up to. Anybody.
Mine was Shimon Peres.
No, okay, I'm talking about living. Go ahead. You got to do this. Anywhere, any continent. Canada, Mexico, Europe, over there, Asia, South America, Africa. Name a foreign leader that you respect.
I guess I'm having an Aleppo moment in the former president of Mexico.
But I'm giving you the whole world.
I know.
Anybody in the world you like. Anybody. Pick any leader.
The former president of Mexico.
Which one?
I'm having a brain.
Name anybody.
Who's your
favorite foreign leader? Get him off the hook. Name a foreign leader you respect.
He was terrific.
Any foreign leader.
Merkel.
I mean, he just threw something out. What do you think? Is Gary Johnson stealing votes from the Donald? From Pepe the Frog? Well, one thing I think we can probably all agree on, but put your comment question in the box, is below, Gary Johnson is an idiot. Again, a very nice guy, and I like your mom jeans, Gary, but you're really dumbing down the sheep. I've got to go to a quick break. I'm Christopher Green. Thank you for tuning in, AMTV Alternative Media Television. When we get back, I will be going live to a Q&A session with you, our audience, all of our on-demand subscribers, and also answering a few questions on Facebook.
AMTV on YouTube. Go check them out. Now, it's pretty funny. This isn't the first time Gary Johnson ran under the Libertarian Party for president. What I believe Gary Johnson to be is someone that has a very, very quick overglance of what libertarians and constitutionalists and Tea Partyists and stuff have complained about. And even on, the more liberal side with marijuana. Gary Johnson looks at all of it. And he goes, what is trendy? He grabbed in and goes, what's trendy in the libertarian movement, the constitutionals and Tea Partyists and the liberal activists when it comes to marijuana, and even the judicial system. And he repeats things that have now become talking points. Things that Ron Paul, he's a big repeater of things Ron Paul has talked about. Which we all, to a certain point, take what we hear and learn, and we will have some of the points, but it doesn't seem like he ever really truly has original thought. He doesn't maybe critically think anything. He believes in freedom. This guy said this. This guy said that. This guy said that. Why do you believe in freedom? Aleppo moment, sorry. It's kind of a scan over of what liberty and freedom are. That's what Gary Johnson seems to be. And he just seems to want to be the cool guy. Stealing votes, I really don't think that you can steal votes. People will vote for who they want, who they believe in, or not vote because of what they believe in. Mine, of course, being in the latter. At least in the presidential race. Talked about many times, vote locally if you're going to vote. That's where the change is going to be. It's the presidential race. It's why they've always wanted you interested in that. While you just vote letters under your congressmen, your local people. I'm a Republican. Click all Republican. I'm Democrat. Click all Democrat. Never really judging people on their character. If you're going to have principles, then you're going to have to stand on those principles. Otherwise, they do you no good. And I think that's where I'm at in my life. It's one of those things that I believe certain things come first in my life. I think freedom in my social interactions come first. When I talk to others, I treat them as they are masters of themselves, even if they work under me. You have these choices. You make whatever choice you want. I can't force you to do anything. And in my personal life, I hold certain things, as valuable things in my word and things like that. It's just important that you have some type of a principle. And that doesn't mean you're perfect at all. But it's saying, I want to be a decent person. I want to be someone I can wake up to in the morning and feel good about. If I can't feel good about myself, how can I truly feel good about anything else? I got a quick one to play here. I'm going to play this right before the end of the broadcast from We Are Changed, the most embarrassing and lowest points of Obama's presidency just happened.
Amazing news just broke, and the cozy relationship between Saudi Arabia and the U.S. government has officially ended. This is a major geopolitical shift in the international landscape. This is all happening right now because the Senate overpassed Barack Obama's veto on being able to sue Saudi Arabia. This is the first veto in Barack Obama's presidency. The first time that the Congress and the Senate actually had enough balls and said, you know what you're doing is freaking ridiculous, and we're all going to come together, Democrats and Republicans, which we hate each other, because you're so stupid, Obama, and then we're going to make sure that your veto doesn't pass. This all happened when the Senate and Congress passed a bill allowing victims' family members to sue Saudi Arabia after the 28 pages were declassified and showed how Saudi Arabia financed the 9/11 hijackers. When this happened, when this bill passed, obviously proving your major ally in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, gave all these money to terrorists, had paid for their flight schools, gave them apartments, had the Saudi Arabian spies set them up here in the United States. It was actually the CIA who got them in from Saudi Arabia. 15 of the 19 hijackers came from Saudi Arabia. The 28 pages, when they were declassified, ultimately proved that. Just a few days ago, I made this video where I went off the veto with Barack Obama trying to stop this bill, which would allow 9/11 victims' family members to sue Saudi Arabia.
Warning, this video will have strong language. If you are sensitive to strong language or have minors around, please don't watch this video because I am fucking pissed off at.
Okay, that's enough. If you want to hear the whole tirade that I went on, go into the description below and watch this video because you can feel and sense the anger that I had because it was the most disgusting veto of his presidency. And just moments ago, the Senate overrid his veto in a stunning 97-1 vote. Only Chode Senator Harry Reid was the only one who voted against the majority of our representative government and didn't want this and wanted this veto to pass. But this is the first override that the president had, and he only has 4 months left in office. This is extremely embarrassing because now there's nothing that Obama can do to stop victims' family members from taking Saudi Arabia to court, having discovery, and having justice and legal repercussions in a way where we could actually find out more truth behind that horrible day on September 11, 2001. And now Obama is stuck in a very awkward moment where he's actually defending this despotic, human rights violating country, Saudi Arabia. And the freaking White House has the balls to say that this is the most embarrassing thing that the United States Senate has done in decades. What? Wait, hold on. Well, seriously, now the White House is pissed at the majority of people saying, wait, we know Saudi Arabia was a part of 9/11. They helped 9/11 happen. Now we want to have justice for that. And the White House is standing and saying, no, this is disgusting that you guys want justice. This is what ultimately the White House, this is what Barack Obama is saying right now. Mr. Hope and Change, the man himself. And now his White House is saying to the members, this is the statement that the White House released, to the members of the United States Senate, only recently informed of the negative impacts of this bill on our service members and on our diplomats is in itself embarrassing. What? This is insane that the White House is even having the goal to say all this. Again, with 9/11, not only is Obama totally humiliated, but after those 28 pages came out, which we have documenting in a video here, we have all the evidence, we have the sources, we have the documents in this video that you're watching right now that you can watch in the description, proving how the 28 pages prove that 9/11 was an inside job and how the United States not only took part in it, but the role that Saudi Arabia was involved in, they actually turned a blind eye to and allowed Saudi Arabia to maneuver some of these terrorists to allow them to do this. The United States and the CIA, especially with information that came out from Michael Springmeier, allowed the terrorists in when they were known terrorists from Saudi Arabia, gave them expedited passes into the United States. So it's not just Saudi Arabia who did 9/11. There's other elements, but now we're going to discover a lot more in these nice legal proceedings that are a beautiful egg in the face of Barack Obama. As we know, Saudi Arabia, the geopolitical repercussions are going to be huge. because Saudi Arabia threatened to liquidate Treasury holdings if Congress passed this bill. Now this bill is law. We will see how Saudi Arabia will respond. We have seen Saudi Arabian newspapers connected to the government of Saudi Arabia say 9/11 was an inside job done by the U.S. government. Now, 28 pages here prove it was Saudi Arabia's involvement as well. So now this whole constant back and forth hot egg kind of game that they're playing is unfolding right in front of us, and it's amazing, and it's really incredible, and it's fun to see explode right in front of Obama's freaking dumb face. Okay. And Obama even admitted himself, the seed money for Al-Qaeda came from Saudi Arabia. Duh. And then it's just crazy because the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia is primarily based on oil. With the price of oil going down, we are seeing Russia, China, and India making moves against the petrodollar. With the failed pipeline that Saudi Arabia was supposed to build through Syria into Europe to bypass Russia, now Saudi Arabia is super pissed at the United States, especially with not being able to have their final mission with getting rid of Bashar al-Assad inside of Syria. But these two allies still were strong a few days ago, with the United States offering and giving too much freaking money, $115 billion in weapons within the next 8 years. Wait, this is, $115 billion worth of weapons. It's within 8 years is given to freaking Saudi Arabia. This is nuts. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia takes those weapon deals, take those bombs that were sold through Hillary Clinton's State Department, through backdoor deals, because Saudi Arabia was financing the Clinton Global Initiative and buying them out. Saudi Arabia uses those bombs and just killed 30 civilians in a water well. And now, on a separate incident, they killed 32 civilians. So the relationship, obviously, is breaking up. Many war hawks and neoconservatives are saying that this will be devastating to our military, because now other countries are going to hold us responsible, and there's going to be some secrets revealed by the other governments because of this move that Congress and the Senate has made, that I am so entirely excited about, because what you're going to see unfold from today's action, the reverberations geopolitically, internationally, are going to be huge. And to get most of it, you have to be on this YouTube channel. So subscribe to youtube.com/wearechange, because
wearechange.org. We Are Change on YouTube. Now, one important thing about this is something he brought up, and I brought it up on here before. It's Saudi Arabia, one, liquidating U.S. debt. Two, it's helping finalize what China and Russia have been working on. And that is getting oil trading in the majority of Europe and Asia basically off the U.S. as a petrodollar. That in itself in the Western world will bring down the economy. But I've warned of this. I said when the truth is revealed, it's going to put holes in everything we've been involved in when Bush was in office and while Obama was in office. They know the truths, and they continue waging war in the Middle East. This is both of them. This is Clinton. Clinton was a part of this. The whole Middle East involvement has been multi-presidential. And many people talk about, between Israel and Palestinians and fighting going on for thousands of years. Well, we've been also involved in this for quite a while, not maybe thousands of years, but I guess if you trace your blood back, there might be quite a few people that might have been involved in this for thousands of years and their families and stuff. But as Americans, we've been over in the Middle East involved in it for a long period of time. And we're just as much to blame as any dictator over there. But unlike some where someone did wrong, how long ago? Chop their hands off, no. What we have to learn to do is forgive. And take what positives we have left and expand on those. But you have to understand the true history. You have to know the truth if you're going to become different, to not repeat the mistakes of history. And we know that there's a lot of miseducation out there. A lot. And I think that, talking to others and stuff, we need to teach history while talking about what's going on now. And how there are some similarities throughout history that should be able to guide us in a better direction. But we have to know the real history. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. Stay tuned here on UCY.TV. Great broadcast coming up after this. And support UCY.TV. If you go to UCY.TV, scroll down towards the bottom, there's an Amazon button. Click that Amazon button, shop Amazon through UCY.TV. Get the same great prices, same great shipping rates, and at the same time, you're helping out UCY cover operating costs. And also check out Amagi Metals. Go to antityrannynews.com/metal and check out all the great deals that Amagi Metals has. I always tell people, don't put all your eggs in one basket, but put some eggs in some baskets. Gold, silver, one of those baskets you should be putting some of your eggs into. And Amagi Metals is one place I trust for my metals. Go check them out. antityrannynews.com/metal. Amagi Metals. And again, thank you all for tuning in tonight. And stay tuned. I'm telling you, you just don't get the selection that you get at UCY from any other network out there. Thank you again. Take care.
This is Ozzy Skateboard.